Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 2, Chapter 24. When Vronsky looked at his watch on the Karenin's balcony, he was so stirred and preoccupied that, though he saw the figures on the face, he did not know what time it was. He hurried out of the entrance, and, picking his way carefully through the mud, he reached his carriage. He had been so absorbed by his conversation with Anna that he had forgotten entirely about his appointment with Bryansky. His memory was scarcely more than instinctive, and only recalled to him that he had decided to do something. He found his coachman asleep on his box under the shade of the lindens. He noticed the swarms of flies buzzing around his sweaty horses, and then, mechanically waking the coachman, he jumped into his carriage and was driven to Bryansky's. He had gone but 6 or 7 versts when his presence of mind returned, and it came over that he was late, and he looked at his watch again. It was 5:30. On this day there was to be several races. First the draft horses, then the officers' 2-verst dash, then a second of 4, and last in which he was to take part. If he hurried, he could be on time by letting Bryansky have the go-by. Otherwise, he ran the risk of getting to the grounds after the court had arrived, and this was not in good form. Unfortunately, it had promised Bryansky. Therefore, he kept on, commanding the coachman not to spare the troika. 5 minutes with Bryansky, and he was off again at full speed. He found that the rapid motion did him good. Little by little he forgot his anxieties, and felt only the excitement of the race, and imagined the brilliant society which would gather today at the course. And he got more and more into the atmosphere of the races as he met people coming from Petersburg and the surrounding country on their way to the hippodrome. When he reached his quarters, no one was at home except his valet, who was waiting for him at the entrance. Everybody had gone to the races. While he was changing his clothes, his valet told him that the second race had already begun, that a number of people had been in to inquire for him. Vronsky dressed without haste, for it was his custom to keep calm and not lose his self-control, and then directed the coachman to take him to the stables. From there he saw a sea of carriages of all sorts, of pedestrians, soldiers, of spectators, approaching the hippodrome. The second course was certainly run, for just at that moment he heard the sound of a bell. He noticed near the stable Makotin's white-footed chestnut gladiator, which they were leading out, covered with a blue and orange caparison and a huge ear protectors. "Where's Cord?" he asked of the groom. "In the stable. He's fixing the saddle." Frou-Frou was all saddled in her box stall, and now they came leading her out. "I wasn't late, was I?" All right," said the Englishman. "Don't get excited." Vronsky once more gave a quick glance at the excellent, favorable shape of his horse as she stood trembling in every limb, and with a feeling of regret he left her at the stable. He saw that it was a favorable chance to approach without attracting observation. The 2-verst dash was just at an end, and all eyes were fixed on a cavalry-guard and a hussar just at his heels, whipping their horses furiously and approaching the goal. The crowd flowed in from all sides, and a group of officers and guardsmen were hailing with shouts for the triumph of their fellow officer and friend. Vronsky joined the throng just as the bell announced the end of the race, while the victor dropped the reins and slipped off from the saddle and stood by his roan stallion, who was dripping with sweat and heavily breathing. The stallion, with painfully heavy sides, with legs apart, stopped with difficulty his rapid course, and the officer, as though awakening from a dream, was looking about him with a gaze of wonder. A throng of friends and curious strangers pressed about him. Vronsky, with intention, avoided the elegant people who were circulating about, engaged in gay and animated conversation. He had already caught sight of Anna, Betsy, and his brother's wife. He did not, however, join them, so that he might not be disconcerted. But at every step he met acquaintances who stopped him and told him various items about the last race, or asked him why he was late. While they were distributing the prizes at the pavilion, and everybody was hurrying in this direction, Vronsky saw his elder brother Alexandre. Like Alexei, he was a man of medium stature and rather stubby. He was a handsomer and ruddier. His nose was red, and his face was flushed with wine, and he had an evil expression. He wore a colonel's uniform with epaulets. "Did you get my note?" he asked of his brother. "You are never to be found." Alexander Vronsky, in spite of his life of dissipation and his love for drink, was thoroughly aristocratic man. Knowing that many eyes were fixed on them, he preserved, while he talked with his brother on the very painful subject, the smiling face of a person who's jesting about some trifling matter. "I got it," said he, "but I don't really understand why you meddle with me. I meddle because I noticed your absence this morning, and because you were not at Peterhof Monday. There are matters which cannot be judged except by those who are directly interested, and the matter in which you concern yourself is such. Yes, but when one is not in the service, I beg you to mind your own business. And that's all." Alexei Vronsky grew pale, and his rather prominent lower jaw shook. He was a man of kindly heart, and rarely got angry, but when he grew angry and when his chin trembled, he became dangerous. Alexander Vronsky knew it, and with a gay laugh replied, "I only wanted to give you Matushka's letter. Don't get angry before the race. Bonne chance," he added in French, and left him. He had scarcely turned away when another friendly greeting surprised Vronsky. "Won't you recognize your friends? How are you, mon cher?" said Stepan Arkadyevitch, who, in the midst of the brilliant society of Petersburg, was no less gay and animated than at Moscow, and now appeared with rosy face and carefully combed and pomaded whiskers. "I came down this morning, and am very glad to be present at your triumph. Where can we meet?" "Come to the mess after the race is over," said Vronsky, and with an apology for leaving him, he squeezed his hand and went towards the place where the horses were getting ready for the hurdle race. The grooms were leading back the horses, wearied by the race which they had run, and one by one those intended for the next course appeared on the ground. They were, for the most part, English horses and hoods, and well caparisoned, and it took for the world like enormous strange birds. Frou-Frou, beautiful though she was so thin, came out stepping high, with her elastic and slender pasterns, and not far from her they were removing the trappings from the lop-eared gladiator. The regular, solid, and superb form of the stallion, with his splendid crupper and his extraordinarily large and well-balanced hooves, attracted Vronsky's admiration. He was just going up to Frou-Frou when another acquaintance stopped him again on his way. "Ha! There's Karenin. He's hunting for his wife. She's in the pavilion. Have you seen her?" "No, I have not," replied Vronsky, and without turning his head in the direction where his acquaintance told him that Madame Karenina was, he went to his horse. He had scarcely time to make some adjustments to the saddle when those who were to compete in the hurdle races were called to receive their numbers. With serious, stern, and almost solemn faces they approached, 17 men in all. Some of them were rather pale. Vronsky's number was 7. "Mount!" was the cry. Vronsky, feeling that he, with his companions, was the focus towards which all eyes were turned, went up to his horse with the show and deliberate motions which were usual to him when he was not entirely at his ease. Cord, in the honor of the races, had put on his gala-day costume. He wore a black coat buttoned to the chin, and an enormously high shirt-collar, which made his cheeks puff out. He had on Hessian boots and a round black cap, calm but full of importance. He stood by the mare's head, holding the reins in his hands. Frou-Frou shivered as though she had an attack of fever. Her fiery eyes gazed askance at Vronsky. He passed his finger under the flap of the saddle. The mare jumped back and pricked up her ears, and the Englishman puckered up his lips with a grin at the idea that there could be any doubt as to his skill in putting on a saddle. "Mount, and you won't be so nervous," said he. Vronsky cast a final glance at his rivals. He knew that he should not see them again until the race was over. Tur had already gone to the starting point. Galtsuin, a friend of his and one of the best racers, was turning around and around his bay stallion without being able to mount. A little hussar in tight cavalry trousers was off on a gallop, bent double over his horse like a cat with the gripes, in imitation of the English fashion. Prince Kozaflev, white as a sheet, was trying to mount a thoroughbred mare, which an Englishman held by the bridle. Vronsky and all his comrades knew 'cause of Fluff's terrible self-conceit and his feeble nerves. They knew that he was timid at everything, especially timid of riding horseback. But now, notwithstanding the fact that all this was horrible to him, because he knew that people broke their necks, and that at every hurdle stood a surgeon, an ambulance with its cross and sister of charity, still he had made up his mind to ride. They exchanged glances, and Vronsky gave him an encouraging nod. One only he had now failed to see. His most redoubtable rival, Makautin, on Gladiator, was not there. "Don't be in haste," said Cord to Vronsky, "and don't forget this one important point. When you come to a hurdle, don't pull back or spur on your horse. Let her take it in her own way." "Very good," replied Vronsky, taking the reins. "If possible, take the lead, but don't be discouraged if for a few minutes you're behind." The horse did not have time to stir before Vronsky, with supple and powerful movement, put his foot on the notched steel stirrup and gracefully, firmly took his seat on the squeaking leather saddle. Then he arranged the double reins between his fingers, and Cord let go the animal's head. Frou-Frou stretched out her neck and pulled upon the reins as though she wanted to ask what sort of gait would be required of her, and she started off at an easy, elastic pace, balancing her rider on her strong, flexible back. Cord followed them with mighty strides. The mare, excited, jumped to right and left, trying to make her master off his guard, and Vronsky vainly endeavored to calm her with his voice and with his hand. They were approaching the river bank where the starting post was placed. Vronsky, preceded by some, followed by others, suddenly heard on the muddy track the gallop of a horse, and Gladiator, with Makautin on his back, smiling and showing his long teeth, dashed by. Vronsky looked at him angrily. He did not like Makautin any too well, and now he was his most dangerous rival. So this fashion of galloping up behind him and exciting his mare displeased and angered him. Frou-Frou kicked up her heels and started off in a gallop, made 2 bounds, and then, feeling the restraint of the curb, changed her gait into a trot which shook up her rider. Cord, disgusted, ran almost as fast and kept up by his master's side.